Alan Quinlan, good morning, good night, good evening to you. How are you?
Morning, lads. I'm not there yet, Ger. Not till tomorrow morning, so I'm still in Ireland at the moment.
Right, very good. Well, the breaking news overnight is that it's going to be Ireland against Joe Schmidt this weekend because COVID has ripped through the coaching ticket of New Zealand and Joe Schmidt has been seconded in. I mean, he just happened to be around and ready to go. This is, for some Irish rugby fans, this is stuff of nightmares. It's like, oh, God, he knows exactly what we're going to do.
It's incredible. It's incredible, isn't it? Joe wasn't supposed to come in and get involved with the All Blacks until after the tour, and now he's in there this week because of COVID. Ian Foster, I think their defence coach, John Plumtree, is gone as well. A couple of players, Havili and Jack Goodhue as well. So, it's kind of crazy and ironic, isn't it? I think Joe was supposed to come back to Ireland for a short break during the first and second test and be back out there for the third test. But now he's, I don't know what his plans are now, but having him back involved this week makes it a little bit more tricky and certainly makes it more interesting, doesn't it?
Well, it's really tasty for the New Zealanders because that coaching ticket was under pressure after what Ireland and France in particular did to them last November. So there was a possibility that if the tour went tits up, that Schmidt would have been the coach for the World Cup. Now, obviously, this coaching ticket might well survive because Joe Schmidt comes in and saves them.
Yeah, it's crazy, really, isn't it? But I suppose certainly by All Black standards, the last couple of years haven't been kind of at the heights we're used to with them. Usually, if they lose a match or two, they get back on track pretty quickly. But I think there's been a big transition the last number of years, even though we'll see the likes of Retallick, Whitelock, Sevilla, Bowden Barrett, all these players who are not youngsters anymore, still heavily involved with the All Blacks. But there's certainly a little bit of a frustration and probably a pressure on Ian Foster and his coaching team going forward. So it'll be interesting. The reality is, and I was thinking about this myself, that they're going to be pretty angry, pretty aggressive against Ireland and pretty determined to not give Ireland a sniff in these three tests. So there's huge pressure all around, and it's going to be big. There's kind of added spice to this, really, because of Ireland's success against the All Blacks in recent years. So now we have Joe Schmidt involved. So it makes it really interesting, doesn't it?
Does Schmidt want to become full-time head coach of the All Blacks one day?
I don't know. I think he's obviously been back in New Zealand for a couple of years now for family reasons and involved with the Blues. And I'm sure, look, it's his home country, it's his home team, and probably the biggest, most exciting kind of coaching job in world rugby. Your percentage of win rate is usually very, very high on, and I would imagine it's a job that he would love to have at some stage. But he was being touted a couple of years ago when he was leaving Ireland, probably before the World Cup, as getting the job. They appointed, and they usually appoint within, don't they? That's why Ian Foster kind of stepped up, but he is under a bit of pressure, and I think it's a little bit unfair in the sense that, there has been a fair bit of change and a lot of top players have moved on, and that transition has happened the last couple of years. But I can't speak for Joe and say he wants the top job, but, obviously he's back in New Zealand and he's going to be heavily linked with us, as is Scott Robertson, given the success he's had with the Crusaders. I think he's made no secret of the fact that he would like to be the All Blacks coach someday as well. So, it just makes it a really interesting week with Joe Schmidt now involved, coaching against players that a lot of them who he really kind of instilled a confidence and a belief and had great success with.
Yeah, it's like Game of Thrones territory in New Zealand at the moment with everything that's going on. So it was Roy O'Connor on Twitter, the Irish Independent. So Schmidt is part of the All Blacks coaching team. We don't know exactly the role, but Ian Foster, he's down with COVID. John Plumtree is down with COVID, and he also says Scott McLeod, another All Blacks assistant, also tested positive for COVID, leaving just Greg Feek and Brad Moore. still standing from the original coaching team. So maybe Joe just goes in and automatically is head coach because that's the role that he's used to doing. He's worked with Greg Feek in the past, and maybe it'll be him in the box making the calls down to to knife us gently in the belly at the weekend.
What I've read myself is that he's going to go in and take the trainings training on Tuesday and Thursday. Whether Ian Foster will be back in the coach's box. We don't know exactly when he tested positive. Was it last Thursday or Friday? Was it last week? Would they get back in the coaching box? But I'd imagine if Joe's going to be involved in the training during the week, that he's going to be probably involved in the match day stuff as well. I think that's the way they'd probably have to plan it.
Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating. What was already an interesting tour has suddenly ratcheted up a significant degree. Also news coming through from Roy O'Connor, Herring and Henderson are injured. Niall Scannell has been called up. Mac Hansen has COVID. He's isolating, so fingers crossed no more COVID in the Ireland camp. That will probably take him out of selection, which means that maybe we're going to see Balakoon. The Maori team has been named overnight as well. TJ Perenara is on the bench. Again, this is coming from Cian Tracy of the Irish Independent. He's saying that Perenara is a joint captain, and Brad Webber, who is co-captain, is going to start at scrum half. He's a 17-time All Black, so no slouch either. This is going to be very, very interesting. Where we start losing some players to COVID, we're down in New Zealand, can't really call up replacements. The squad gets thin. And suddenly it's like, uh-oh.
Andy Farrell at number 8.
Yeah, it's a challenge for them, isn't it? And they're probably, where we were a number of months ago when they started opening things up and COVID still being pretty present. And that's the difficulty. I'm not sure what the Ian Henderson injury is or the Rob Herring one, but obviously Rob Herring is, you're down to two... You're down to two hookers if Herring isn't available for Wednesday's Maori game, and then you're in a risky situation. Sorry, lads, I lost you for a sec.
Yeah, no worries. No, the update came through. There's no specific. It's not like that they've been sent home. Henderson and Herring both picked up knocks in training on Saturday and will be scanned today, Monday, in Auckland. Niall Scannell has been added to the squad to provide additional cover at hooker. He will arrive in New Zealand on Tuesday morning. And Mac Hansen tested positive for COVID and has been isolated from the rest of the squad. We're going to have a team named overnight, so this time tomorrow we'll know the team for the Maori game.
Yeah, it's and I suppose it's some guys, Ger, are going to have to double up this week, which makes it pretty difficult. I think if you traditionally, for some players here, I suppose some guys would have done it on a Lions tour, but the likes of probably Conor Murray, maybe Keith Earls, Rob Herring, if he was on the bench, would have had to double up. Dan Sheehan could be involved now. So it's tricky for the players who are probably going to double up, and they may be sitting on the bench twice this week, if that makes sense. I would have had Ty Byrne probably involved in the Maori game to get him some game time, not starting for the All Black test on Saturday, because I suppose I thought Henderson and James Ryan maybe were the two that played a number of matches towards the end of the season, would have been match fit, and it would have been brilliant to have Ty Byrne coming off the bench. He may have to start now. Maybe Joe McCarthy might come into the picture if Henderson is not able to train during the week, but certainly when a player is going for a scan, you'd worry, and there's a little bit of concern there. I hope he's all right, but it's not ideal, because if he's going for a scan, he's probably not going to train this week. But the rest of the players that are kind of travelling out, and we get probably a team for the Maori match pretty soon. You'd imagine this 95% of the starting team won't be involved on Saturday. And that's why they're brought out there. That's why he's brought an extended squad. But some players are going to have to double up, and that's probably going to be on the bench.
Yeah, sorry, of course, I mentioned Balakoon. He's injured. Obviously, he did his hip while I was on holidays and missed that. So what are you hoping for from the players who do have to double up? Like that no one will start the game at the weekend for the tests, who has played significant minutes, or do you want some game time at all during the week to sharpen you up?
No, I think the team I've kind of picked is you brought Jeremy Loughman out there, so there's no point in starting Cian Healy at loosehead and then having him on the bench and having an issue there. I think Jeremy Loughman did. What happens at hooker now, Ger, because of Rob Herring? Dave Heffernan, I think, will still start against the Maoris, but Dan Sheehan, it's going to be very difficult for Niall Scannell to go straight on the bench for the Maori game. If he's only in Tuesday, maybe he will. Tom O'Toole, Ryan Baird, Joe McCarthy, Cian Prendergast, Nick Timoney, Gavin Coombs. That's the forward pack that I would start. And really, you want to try and find out a little bit about the character of these guys in a really kind of hostile environment. It's kind of a little bit unknown, all these players who are going to play for the Maoris, the New Zealand team, they've all been pretty good in Super Rugby. They've 10 debutants. So there's a little bit unknown about how good they'll be and how well they'll gel together. So we can't really predict this game or kind of know what's exactly going to happen. But, if they're allowed to play the Maoris and get time and space, they can be devastating. But it's a real kind of test for the players. Craig Casey has started 9. Harry Byrne or Kieran Frawley. It depends what Andy Farrell and Mike Hatt see Kieran Frawley's role in this tour. Is he ahead of Harry Byrne now? If you bring Harry Byrne, maybe you start him and throw him in there on Wednesday. Bundy Aki is kind of an interesting one. I saw some journalists kind of saying that maybe he'll start against the Maori and, he won't be starting or on the bench for the Ireland test, which would be difficult because Robbie Henshaw and himself are kind of going head-to-head for that 12 jersey. Maybe they'll end up playing together in the test. Who knows? James Hume as well at 13 and Jordan Larmour, Michael Lowry. They're kind of the players that the obvious kind of choices that will start that Maori game. And then you're going to have some guys, as I said, on the bench doubling up, it's a tough week for them. They may only play 2 20-minute clips and end up with 40 minutes this week, but just mentally preparing for a game on Wednesday, then probably trying to recover and switch back into a test match situation on Saturday. But that's the nature of touring.
And also probably the nature of what they want to achieve before the World Cup next year. And Andy Farrell did say that he wants 40 players capable of playing World Cup knockout rugby next year. This is, like everybody said it's like one of the most challenging tours Ireland are ever going to go on. And when you throw that Maori situation into the mix to kick things off, like there is going to be a lot of hard questions asked with what this Irish team has to go through over the next little while.
There is, yeah. And I think, thinking about it all, we're a year out from the World Cup, and I think obviously what happened the last time we were in 2018, a year out from before 19 World Cup in Japan, the Irish team was in brilliant form. It was all positive. So those kind of questions under pressure, and they might be little moments in the game where you are under severe pressure and you just got to hold on for dear life defensively, steal a line out, win a big scrum, make a big tackle, something like that. Those kind of moments that can really enhance a player's self-confidence, self-belief, and make them feel that they're ready to really challenge for the starting jersey. So it is about creating depth. And, Wednesday night in Hamilton is going to be fairly hostile, and there's so much tradition with the Maori jersey and the history of all that. It was interesting to have Rua Tipoki in with them last week, just talking about the culture and what it means to play for the Maoris. But look, I think they'll be skillful enough, and probably a lot of these young players will be pretty confident and want to lay down a marker, but they've got to play as a unit and play as a team. And a lot of the players who are going to play have been in really good form.
There's a world in which we lose all 5 games, isn't there? Like, it's not beyond the bounds of possibility here. The experimental Maori side, or the inexperienced Maori side as opposed to experimental, maybe suggests Ireland should be favourites for that game. But it's hard to know until we see what Ireland team is named. There is a world in which we lose all 5 games and it's not a disaster. There's a world in which we lose all 5 games and it's a complete disaster.
Correct. Yeah, lose all 5 games and you're competitive and you're close in those games, and really, scoring tries and getting moments in those games, as I spoke about. And it's not the end of the world, because I'd rather kind of find things out now, and I'm sure Andy Farr would say that he'll want to win these matches, but and learn from some experiences and be able to look back when you do the analysis, say, well, a certain defensive lapse here, or a scrum issue, or someone switching off here has cost us a game, or a bit of discipline or something like that, a couple of penalties. But if you're in a situation, and that's what I say, you don't know what way these Maori All Blacks will kind of gel together. They're obviously very, very talented players. They've played 18 weeks of Super Rugby, so they're right slap bang in the middle of their season. They'll all be pretty match fit and match sharp. And you'll have some X factor players in there who will be really kind of trying to push on to the All Blacks as well, because they have a big summer ahead. So it's a big challenge, but I'd be confident. I'm really keen to see how they cope with just being in New Zealand, that whole culture there, and the obsession with rugby. And it's a brilliant place to tour. I've been there a number of times. It's a fantastic place. The people there are brilliant. They love their rugby and they appreciate good rugby. So, I hope, and hopefully a lot of these players who get an opportunity on Wednesday night really step up to the plate.
All right. Well, Alan, safe flight tomorrow. Thanks a million for joining us today. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, lads.
It's Alan Quinlan about to head off for the adventure down under.